Everyone underestimates the height. I love you, mystery person in the dark. I'm going to pull it. It was my mom's first day in a new nursing home, and I was pretty nervous about it because the place did not seem to be in great shape from the outside. It kind of looked like if Ozzy Osbourne was a building. Just grimy and just falling apart. And when I walked in, I immediately saw plaster flaking from the ceiling and stuffing coming out of the furniture. But there was this bird in the lobby, a cockatiel. And I thought, hey, my mom likes birds. I wonder if this one can talk. So I sat next to an old lady who was trying to coax it into speaking. After about 20 minutes of cajoling, she did get it to say a few words. And one of the words it said was, help. I don't know if you've ever heard a cockatiel talk before, but it's not cute at all. It's profoundly creepy. They have these scratchy, almost otherworldly voices. They almost sound like they're transmitting someone else's scrambled message, so it was especially bone-chilling to hear it say, help. It didn't seem like a great sign for what this place might have in store. I quickly discovered why the bird knew help. This facility was home to lots of patients with dementia, and patients with dementia often wake up not knowing where they are and start calling help, help, help over and over. And sometimes the cries for help will wake up the other patients with dementia, who will also start calling for help. And you can go help them, but they'll usually forget you were there right after you leave, and sometimes they'll start right back up again. So at any time of the day or night in this place, there's a chorus of people just crying for help. And this constant state of low-level alert had reduced the people who worked there to a bunch of burnt-out shells who seemed to resent the hell out of their jobs, with the exception of one person. There was this nurse named Marjorie who seemed like she had the unofficial job title of designated optimist. She stood out in this place like a Tigger in a world full of Eeyores. She had this permanent smile on her face that was so intense that it bordered on deranged, like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. And every day she wore neon pink scrubs and ping-ponged around the facility like a manic pixie glow stick, passing out muffins, spearheading arts and crafts projects, making inside jokes with everyone and saying stuff like, okie dokie, and hey there, Mr. Man, without a trace of irony. I should have loved this person. I should have seen her as a life raft, as a beacon of light in this quintessence of dark. But for some reason, she bugged the shit out of me, and I'll tell you why. Imagine that in the span of 8 months, you watched your mom go from being a fully independent adult with a car and a job to wearing a diaper and eating pureed chicken with a special rubber fork. And imagine no one ever took you aside to tell you this, but you were beginning to piece it together that she's not going to get better. Then imagine that midway through you realizing this, Elmo from Sesame Street kicks down your door with a disco ball in one hand and a boombox in the other and starts trying to teach you how to dab. That's what Marjorie's presence in my life felt like. Her optimism was intense. It was invasive and aggressive. It minimized and undercut the shittiness of my reality, like a neon pink gaslight of happiness. I couldn't be mad at her because she was great at her job and my mom loved her. And in a world full of sickness and burnouts and creepy talking birds, you shouldn't turn your back on a source of niceness just because it's a little too nice for your tastes. So I told myself, at some point, you need to tell Marjorie how thankful you are for all of this. And eventually I did. I just didn't pick a great time to do it. The night that I decided to tell Marjorie to thank her was the night this massive storm hit. Other than Harvey, it's the biggest weather event in my recent memory. The high water outside started forcing cars onto the shoulder, and the wind sent waves of water crashing into the walls with enough force that it felt like there was a medieval army charging our door with a battering ram. All the mayhem outside, as you might imagine, started to foment a similar kind of mayhem inside. Within minutes, more than half a dozen patients were calling for help all at once. Others were crying. One confused old man wandered into my mom's room and sat on the spare bed opposite hers. We didn't bother him, he didn't bother us. We all just sat there together, watching Guy Fieri's diners, drive-ins, and dives, wondering if everything would still be there in the morning. After about 40 minutes of intense wind and rain, a crack started forming in one of the lobby walls, and the staff had to pull everything out of the room and use it to barricade entry to that part of the building, for fear the roof might start to collapse. This is when the pandemonium really started to approach critical levels. Half the patients in the building collected into a mob in the den, getting swept up into this hysteria, panic, forming this cacophonous mass of pain and need. It's one of the scariest sights I've ever seen outside of a Tyson chicken factory. Some of the staff members just lost it. I watched one nurse's aide look at the mob of residents and say, and make a beeline for the break room. But Marjorie was not one to bail. She dove right into the middle of it all like a paratrooper, unfazed, like it was any other day. And maybe for an hour, I watched her bounce from person to person going, "Hey there, Mrs. Austin, can I help you? Hey there, Mrs. Julius, can I help you? Hey there, Mrs. Austin, can I help you again? Hey there, Mrs. Julius, can I help you again?" She was like Bill Murray at the end of Groundhog Day, embracing the absurdity of the situation which she was trapped with this Zen-like mastery. It's one of the few things I've ever witnessed firsthand that I have no problem calling heroic. So when she finally got around to visiting my mom's room, I told her that. I said, "Marjorie, you've been amazing tonight." She said, "Oh, stop." I realized it was probably going to be a little difficult to get her to take a compliment, so I got in the way of her work for a second. I made her look at me. I said, listen. I know how hard you work here every day. I know how little thanks you get. I know the people you help sometimes yell at you and spit at you, and some of them don't even remember your name. But I do. And for what you've done for my mom, I always will. Thank you. And for maybe the first time ever, I saw Marjorie stop smiling. Her face shifted into this strained expression, and I realized that she was starting to tear up, and I thought, wow, I guess she really needed to hear that. But then her tearing up quickly escalated into full-on red-faced sobbing. And then the full-on red-faced sobbing escalated into what could only be called a shit fit. Marjorie collapsed in my mom's chair and started letting loose these biblically eerie moans that sounded halfway between a banshee and a dying orca whale, just... It's like my words had opened up a floodgate behind her eyes. And now a pressurized current of liquefied despair was jetting out of her face with an intensity that almost matched the outside storms. And I thought, oh, dear God, I broke Marjorie. And for maybe 10 minutes, we all just sat there and watched her fall apart. Me, my mom, the random old guy who was still sitting on the spare bed. In between sobs, hearing Guy Fieri on the TV, Flavor Town. Then Marjorie got up, wordlessly sulked out, and that's the last I saw of her that night. After it happened, I started to realize the reason Marjorie's incessant positivity sometimes seemed at odds with her reality is because it was. Because to work in a place like that and to stay positive, one has to engage in a heavy amount of reality avoidance. I think Marjorie saw the world through this set of ultra-pleasant, sugar-coated glasses that she'd crafted for herself. They were her protection. And what I'd done with my little speech was to just rip those safety glasses off of her face and force her to just stare directly into the unfiltered reality of her world. It was like pulling off an astronaut's helmet in deep space. It was too much for her to bear. Maybe the craziest part of this is that when I saw her the next day, she didn't even address it. On the way past her in the halls, I started trying to apologize, but she cut me off with a startling amount of pep and just said, "Hey there, sunshine." And the subtext was clear enough to me. Underneath that, "Hey there, sunshine," she was saying, "Please, would you let me have my world?" So I did.